Thank you for coming. It's nice to see all the faces, a lot of friendly faces here I know came to support me. I know they're probably better at business than I am, but thanks for coming and thanks for listening. It's good practice. My name is Bob Ernst, and I am the president of FBN Construction, and I'm also president of the Builders and Remodelers Association of Greater Boston. Standard fare, we are recording. So if you can turn off your cell phones and things, put them on quiet. Either way, I don't care. If you want to make a tweet or a text, not pay attention, that's fine. But just for the recording, if it doesn't ring, that'd be good. My credentials are the same as yours. I'm just a business person who's been learning through the School of Hard Knocks. What I bring to the table is I ran a business into the ground twice in 10 years. The first 10 years in business, and it wasn't like, 5 years ran it in, did another 5 years and ran it in. What I think happened to me, which I see happen to a lot of contractors and business people in general out there, is we go along in business and you get a job, you get another job, you get another job, and you think you're doing fine. You don't realize you're actually in descent. Because the music's playing, you're getting another job, you're rolling along. So I was really, without knowing it, I got my first job, I got into business, and then I was in this sort of slow descent for a long time. Hit the ground pretty good about 8 years in. Had to really look hard at things and make some tough decisions. Got another decent job, which kind of got me off the runway again. And then right about the time I was about to crash really hard, an angel appeared in the form of an introduction to another business person who was also struggling. He had just joined the Builders Association. It was called BAGB then, without the R for the remodelers. We hadn't earned our stripes yet, but and he had just joined and kind of figured out that he needed somebody else. He needed more, and so he went out asking around to lumber yards. Does anybody know anybody that might help me in my business? My lumberyard, who was probably sick of not getting paid by me because I was struggling, said, yeah, he needs help and you need help. Why don't you guys get together? That worked out really well. John and I started working together. Effectively, he gave me a job when I really needed one. In return, I really helped him grow his business. We did that together through the Builders Association, through coming to classes like this. I can't tell you how many of these I've sat in, and I can't tell you how many more I will, but I will be sitting in a lot of these. Don't stop coming, and do as much of it as you can. The reason I'm doing this is to give back partially. Also, in the course of putting together the program, I re-educate myself and learn some of the things that I've learned along the way that I need to focus on. So, pitch for BRAGB. And the National Association of Home Builders, it's singly responsible for John and my success. My partner, John, many of you know, passed away a couple years ago, and but between John and I and BRAGB, it really made all the difference in the world. So, welcome here. A little bit more. My background, I started back in the early 80s when I was a young kid. I didn't go to college. It was working in a restaurant, worked as a waiter, a bartender, a cook, a maitre d', everything in a big restaurant in Harvard Square. After a couple years of early 80s restaurant lifestyle, some of you old enough might remember what that was like. I don't remember some of it, but it was a lot of fun. And I learned a lot about the restaurant business. I learned, how to cook and how to bartend and everything else. After about 3 years, I realized I wasn't really going anywhere. I was having a lot of fun, but I wasn't going anywhere. I gave my notice, didn't really know what I was going to do. But I gave 2 months notice. I said, 2 months, I'm gone. Whether I have a job or not, I'm gone. A week before I left, I got a phone call. It was my night off, and I got a phone call. Hey, one of our line cooks didn't show up. Would you come in? So I went in to cook. So I'm on the line, I'm cooking away, flipping burgers, making steaks. The owner of the restaurant came in, hadn't been there in a while. Walked in, was walking through the restaurant with the manager, said hi, walked away. Unbeknownst to me, he said to the manager a little later, wasn't that Bobby, my name at the time, Bobby Ernst in there? And she said, yeah. And he said, I thought he was a waiter. And he said, well, no, he waits, he bartends, he cooks, he does whatever we need. And he said, wow, that's great. We need more guys like that. That's awesome, you know? And she said, well, this is his last week. He said, really? And she said, yeah, it was his night off, but he came in to cook. And she said, he said, it's his last week, it was his night off, and he still came in to help us, you know, when we needed him. She said, yeah. She said, send him to my office. This is how he made decisions. I walked down the office, took off my greasy apron, and he said, why are you leaving? I said, I need to do something else. I'm going to die if I keep doing this. He said, tell you what, I've got to close the restaurant down. The restaurant was in the basement of a building in Harvard Square. Big 300 square foot restaurant, 33 Dunster Street, for some of you may remember it. He said to me, I have to shut the restaurant down to replace the sewer line for the whole building. The landlord's shutting it down. We're going to be closed for 9 days. I've closed Christmas Day for the last 10 years since I've owned a restaurant. That's the only day we're closed. We've never done anything. I want you to figure out what needs to get done and how to get it done in 9 days. And I said, I've never picked up a hammer in my life, a screwdriver. I don't know anything about anything. He said, that's okay. You got 9 months to learn. We're not doing it for 9 months. So my first job in construction was to remodel a restaurant, figure out what needs to get done, how to get it done, price it, schedule it, get it all done in 9 days. That's how I got into this business. I knew nothing about what I was doing, and I became a project manager. It went pretty well. It was a little embarrassing at first, but the project went very well. We got a lot done, got it all done 9 days, 24 hours a day, integrating everybody. After doing that, he sent me over to remodel a restaurant, a church, turn it into a restaurant in Newton. That was a 1-year project. I went in there, it was a huge project, steel structures, everything else. I didn't know what I was doing. Went in there and a little embarrassing at first, but we got it done. In a year's time, we opened a fabulous, beautiful restaurant that ultimately failed, but that wasn't my fault. The structure was good. The structure stayed up. After that, I decided I really liked construction and I wanted to do it full time, but I needed to learn from the bottom up. So I left the restaurant business and I got a job with a framing crew. The framing crew was kind of a rough and tumble crew back in the early 80s. It was embarrassing. I didn't know what I was doing. I showed up with my brand new leather tool belt and combination square instead of a speed square and a finish hammer instead of a framing hammer. But I got through it and I learned how to frame. Then I figured, all right, I want to do something more, so I got somebody to hire me in a remodeling company. I didn't know anything about finish carpentry, and I didn't know, sheetrock or anything else. I just banged 2x4s and plywood. But after a little bit of embarrassment, and I learned, and I got there, and I got to be pretty good at that. All was going pretty well. A lot of, jumps and starts, and I was doing fine. I got married, had my first child, all was good. Then I decided my boss there, my project manager there, I became a foreman, he was a project manager. At one point came to me after a couple of years, said, Bob, I've got, my doctor wants me to remodel her house. I got a job, it's a $60,000 job. It was, oh my God, $60,000 job. And I need some help. Why don't you and I go start a business and we'll remodel this house. We sat down, looked, he said, look, you're making $15 an hour now. You can pay, we can do this, we'll bill it out at $20 an hour and it'll be great. You'll be making $5 more an hour. We'll add 10% to the materials and subs just like our boss does. We'll make all kinds of money. It'll be great, better than the $15 an hour you're making now. So I went in, we didn't know what we were doing. It was embarrassing. Same story. The only difference was it wasn't a job. I wasn't getting paid by somebody else. Right now, which I didn't realize, it was my money every day. And it took a while because $60,000, we got a $10,000 deposit, and you buy things on credit and everything's fine. But it wasn't long before, we got to get another job, we got to get another job. And what changed was it wasn't just embarrassing anymore. When the music slowed down from time to time, so did the money and everything else. So about 10 years of that, up and down, oh, we're doing fine, we got a deposit check, we're doing great and everything else. No business training, nothing. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I kept doing it because it seemed to make sense. What I'm going to share with you today, I think, is just common logic, common sense. There's nothing here I'm going to tell you that you're going to say, I had no idea. Everything I tell you, you can say, oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I get it. That's my feeling. What you're going to find is that we don't do it enough. You get it, you know it, you might even think you're doing it, but you may not be. And that's what I want to point out today is the importance of general business practice. So I'm going to skip forward here. I haven't needed these yet, that's good. So basic business principles that I want to talk about. All right, very important. Revenue minus cost of goods sold equals gross profit. All right, we're going to talk about estimating, but for me, estimating isn't just how many 2x4s, how many tiles, it's all of your costs, okay? And I think that's the important thing about estimating, is it's not just about how much it's going to cost you to do the job, it's how much you need to charge. Gross profit minus expenses has to be greater than zero, right? Make sense? Right? Very simple, very straightforward, basic business principles. Nobody told me this before I started my business, but in retrospect, makes a lot of sense. So, what is the purpose of estimating? Is it to know how much the job will cost to build? Is that what you need to do with estimating? Or is it to know how much you need to charge, right? So most of us are pretty good at estimating. We can sit down and think about how much something's going to cost and figure out how many 2x4s, how many pieces of plywood, look at the schedule and see what sinks, what faucets. Most of us can do that pretty well. It's the other part of this that we need to know. Who needs to estimate jobs? There's a lot of different ways to do work out there. There's bid work. You know, you get a set of plans from an architect, the designer. You get a sketch on a cocktail napkin from a homeowner saying how much to build this. So you have to put together an estimate. Insurance work. You know, somebody had a ice dam and their house was flooded and you've got to go in. Now, a lot of times the insurance work, they're going to come to you, or your client's going to come to you with the insurance company's estimate and say, here you go, this is how much I got to do the job, go ahead. You should still estimate. Cost plus, and these three are all sort of cost plus work, time and material work, and guaranteed maximum price. They're all very similar. This is where I think a lot of people make a mistake.